Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. We got another podcast, another awesome episode. I'll just let you guys know ahead of time before we even start and introduce our guest. This will be a very different podcast episode than we've done before. So just a heads up to anybody, it may not be as goofy and silly as it normally is, but that's okay, because that's what we just want to connect people to interesting and unique stories, which is what we're going to do today. So today we have a return guest, Josh Sepanski, the owner of Joshua Sepanski Media. Josh, what's going on, man?
I'm doing good. How are you guys today?
We're great.
We're doing good. Always happy to chat with you. We were just kind of joking off air. It's funny because we haven't actually spoken like this for quite a while. It's been at least a year. But I feel like you've been such an awesome supporter on Instagram specifically of all of our stuff that it feels like we've been talking since last week. You know what I mean? So, but it's nice to finally actually sit face to face with you again and have a conversation. And, Deb, I don't know if you want to explain a little bit of why Josh is here, but we do have you on for a very specific reason. It is interesting because I reached out to you initially because I said, hey, we would love to have Josh on again. So I reached out to you and, I think initially I said, hey, we would love to talk about your business, how it's grown since we last spoke to you, what you've been doing differently, all that stuff. And you're like, hey, actually, this thing's going to come out about my dad. Maybe we can talk about that. I'm like, yeah, let me know when the article comes out. And I saw the article. I'm like, whoa, way darker than I was expecting. But a very interesting story. So I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that, Deb, before we let Josh go?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have so many questions. And I'm sure after whoever's listening to this, I'm sure as soon as this episode's over, that everyone has questions too. This is a very bizarre situation, to say the least, right? So let me preface really quick, and then then Josh will let you get into it. But so the article that came out, it's in the Sacramento Bee, and it came out in April. The title is "How a Sacramento Man Kept 8," and then in quotations, "spiritual wives and 21 children hidden, and no one intervened." So just that title alone is just like, it's just like, wow. And it's a very long and detailed article. And I got to tell you, Josh, the more I kept reading, the more I could I don't hide expression from my face at all. I'm in public while I'm reading this, and I could just imagine what I look like, but my jaw is dropping. I'm literally yelling, what the F out loud as I'm reading. It's just, it's very unfortunate. I don't need to, we'll let you tell the story, but it's very bizarre. And we think you're very brave for just doing the right thing for yourself and your family, and just letting it come to light. Because I can't imagine in a million years what all of that must have been like, especially, and same to the rest of your family. So yeah, I don't know if you can just jump right into it, but I'm also curious as to how I guess how you decided to no, we're just going to go forward and just expose this. So I'm not sure where you want to start, but I'm very curious as to how all of this got started and how it got to the Sacramento Bee. And then of course we're going to want, or you can tell our audience the whole story in your own words as much as you want.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I think I'll just start with the contrast of, speaking of what Josh was saying about the last time we talked. Last time we talked, I was in a different place of, I don't know if you guys know about avoidance method as far as dealing with trauma and stuff, but ever since it happened and ever since I was around it, and even going through high school and stuff, I'd always try to use the avoidance method to deal with the stuff I was going on. And I was, dealing with my dad himself. I would try to, be extra quiet around him so that I could compensate for how loud he was or how obnoxious he was, or going through the situation or out of the situation. I was always trying to just ignore it or try to, acknowledge it, but not be real, not trying to expose it or be real loud about it. So, because it was kind of embarrassing to be a part of. So I used to have that kind of mindset, but now today with you guys the second time, I'm kind of in a different space mentally about that. And kind of transitioned into a thought process about, it's, first of all, it's not just about me. It's obviously about, 30 plus people, 35 or so victims. And, me avoiding it, me being embarrassed about it isn't going to help anything, isn't going to, there are some people currently still dealing with the situation. So, gone from avoidance method to now I'm all in trying to help expose it and trying to help get some sort of justice for the many people involved. And it's a lot, and there's so many layers to the story, but yeah, I was very happy and it was very fulfilling to get that article released this year, just because I honestly, even while we were doing it, I didn't think that something like that was possible, just the way I grew up and everything. So it's very fulfilling. Kind of touched on most of the stuff. There's a lot of stuff that just wouldn't fit in there. So yeah, it's kind of excited about, the initial exposure of the story, and just looking to build on that and try to start working on some sort of justice for the victims involved.
Yeah.
So for anybody who hasn't had a chance to look at the article yet and read the article, and this is the first time they're hearing about it, this might be a difficult thing, simply because, like you said, there's a lot to it. But can you just give us just a brief idea of what the article is about? And then obviously you said exposure is the main portion or the main purpose of the article, but can you give us a little idea of what what's shared in the article and what the story is about?
Yeah, it's about my crazy dad who basically carried out a premeditated plan to trap young, vulnerable girls, or young women, and started doing it manipulation wise, like mentally, religiously, and then eventually physically. And he trapped them to use them for every scam imaginable. This was back, in the 1990s and carried out decades after, but late 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s, he was trapping young, vulnerable women who were already going through horrible family situations, and then he would trap them, use them for every scam imaginable, like insurance fraud, welfare fraud, credit card fraud, social security, just everything you can think of. And with these 8 women, he had 21. People have actually come forward from this story, so we've actually learned. I have other siblings that I didn't know about, so we're up to about 23 or 24 right now.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. That wasn't mentioned in the article that was after the article came out.
Correct. Yeah, we had some people come forward after the article was released that said they were related to me. So it's been quite a ride, for sure. But yeah, so he had about between, we'll say, 22 to 24 kids with these 8 women, and basically using us for the same thing, spreading out assets in people's names, credit card fraud, welfare fraud. And something that the article didn't mention was actually that more related to the financial side of things, that it was heavily premeditated for the financial side of it. He's money obsessed and will do anything for an extra buck. And by the time that I escaped him when I was 18, 19, he had me in debt 33 grand that I didn't even know about. And that's just the tip of the iceberg compared to some of the other people that escaped him and found out, with all the stuff that he put in their name and all the credit card fraud he ran up and everything. Some people were looking at close to $500,000 in debt. And just the fact that he's just walking around acting like nothing ever happened, calling us liars and entitled and stuff like that. It just motivates me to keep going with this and try to get some sort of justice. But yeah.
Wow. So he took out credit cards or something in your name and already has you tens of thousands of dollars in debt.
Yeah, thank goodness for the FBI fraud department in that category. I had no idea this wasn't even a thing. I obviously wasn't looking out for it or anything, but
Mm.
I went to Best Buy one day and tried to open up a credit card, and the guy literally laughed at me when he ran my credit report, and I was like, okay, that's weird. Um, and so I tried to look up what's going, and I was like, oh, it's probably just because I don't have any credit yet, so that's affecting my credit score, something like that. And then the Chase Bank showed me that yes, I have 33 grand in debt, and it was all connected to banks that I had heard him talking about. And, so I knew for sure it was him, and he has no shame in it. He admits it and is, kind of um, gloats about how much money he's made off of us. So
Yeah,
Oh,
that's interesting. Now, obviously, your name's mentioned quite a bit in the article, and other there was obviously a lot of other, like you said, siblings and people involved in this. Was everybody on board with this story coming out and being shared, or were there some people that were hesitant and maybe still a little bit unsure of as to whether or not they wanted to, be a part of this, or what was that process like? Because I imagine that was a pretty complicated thing to kind of wade through.
yeah, and it still is. Um, yeah, there's people involved that are actually in hiding, that
mm.
are so much traumatized from this that they're off in other states and hiding from everything and don't want anything to do with it. There's some people that have circumstances that they would not like to be a part of it either. Yeah, it is some tricky waters to wade through, and I've as I try to write the book about it, I'm also dealing with that as well. And a lot of people are hesitant. A lot of people are, understandably so, very worried about possible outcomes of everything. And especially from the life we came from, there's a lot of people still getting used to, just daily world functions and stuff. And so, yeah, it's tricky, but I think it's important, and I think it's worth trying to take on and understanding. So that's what I've been trying to do.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the things, because if anybody didn't listen to the last episode, uh, we on air during our episode, you and I realized that I had actually spoken to your basketball team. Like you started describing a team talk that was done, and then I realized, oh man, that was me. And so
Mhm.
we didn't even make that connection. I knew we had a common connection in your coach, um, but we didn't realize that I had spoken to your team when you were in high school. So as I'm reading this article, like I am thinking back to when I spoke to your team and with you as a high schooler, and you're dealing with all these things, which is a pretty wild thing to think because you just never know. You always hear it, but I mean, really, you never know what someone's going through and what their life is like, beyond what you know of them. And so, tell me a little bit more about like what that was like for you in high school, because that's a heavy stuff for a kid. I mean, Deb works with high schoolers. Deb's a teacher, and so I imagine this kind of hit your teacher's heart as well, Deb. But like, tell me a little bit about that, what the experience was like going through high school, because really, really dark stuff.
Well, immediately, and sorry to interrupt really quick, but I immediately, as soon as I'm reading this article in my brain, I'm like, why did the teachers not notice? And it's hard, right? Like, and I get it because there's been situations that like sometimes I don't know either. But anyway, I'll let you go ahead and talk because that must have been really hard at such a young age to go through all that.
Yeah, and really, it was just the ignorance factor because I've from a very young age, my way of handling all the stuff that was going on around me was just avoidance method. I would try to, you know, try to think ahead of like, oh, okay, well, I know he's really upset right now, so or he gets triggered easily and gets very upset easily. So let me try to just be, be a shell of myself and be, extra quiet. Or I was always trying to react and try to think ahead so that I could maybe in my head I thought I was helping people get hurt less, or stuff like that. So um, you know, I'm not the oldest. I'm the oldest boy of his. The old, but he has older. I have older step siblings, and they didn't get to go. Some of them didn't get to go to school at all. Some of the kids below me didn't get to go to school at all. So um, that's basically kind of the the theme of the whole story is complete isolation. We were stuck in the house. He had us in a house in South Sacramento, locked away, and I did not step out my front or back door till I was 7 years old. We were sitting investments for him. So yeah, I first went to high school or went to school at all for the first time when I was 15, going on 16, to San Juan High School, where you came and gave us our basketball team a talk. But yeah, I don't blame teachers or anybody for not noticing, because I was so embarrassed about it. I purposely and intently tried to hide it away from everybody. Even through like previous years and church, going to some church stuff here and there, people say the same thing, like, why didn't they, and I'm just like, because we were so embarrassed about it that we intently tried to hide it. And we're just trying to have a normal life like everybody else, and we didn't want that to stop us from being able to have that. So we were trying to hide it. We were trying to hide all that stuff. And on top of him making sure that we did, like, there's a twofold situation. So yeah, I don't blame any teacher. And there's a lot of teachers that kind of did suspect something, and tried to help out and tried to give extra care. And I've been on another podcast where I shouted out Mrs. Durkee from San Juan High School. She single-handedly, she recognized that I was in a situation that she didn't know what it was, but she knew it was probably something bad, and so she gave me a little extra attention and single-handedly made sure that I got to college. Stuff like that. So yeah, there was a lot of positive out of it. I don't ever like to put blame on anybody. Sometimes some of my family members involved in this, that they try to place, sometimes they get confused with placing blame in other directions, and I just have to remind them, like, it all comes back to one person. We wouldn't know each other. None of this would have happened without the one guy. So
Yeah.
that's how I try to see it.
Well, and then and in the article, it even said that CPS was called a few times, or I'm not sure exactly how many times, and even still nothing, was done. And in the article mentioned, some of, the women just being like, no, nothing's wrong. But in reading the article, it's like, I couldn't even, blame them or be mad at the moms. Cause like, coming from a place of being so scared and so manipulated and so beaten down emotionally, physically, and everything, it's like they did, like, and being dependent on just kind of, anyway, Stockholm syndrome, whatever. We can keep talking about all those things. I think people understand what I'm trying to say, but that even the CPS, like, nothing like happened with that either.
Yeah, that was a big part of it too. It's CPS was called multiple times. There's many times that I remember where I don't know the exact number, but I remember many times where our house would be just looking horrible. He would have no food in the house for a long time, and then suddenly CPS would leave a card on the fence or something saying, we're going to be back 2 weeks from now, like, you guys better be ready, type of thing, or please give us a call. And suddenly I'd wake up one morning and the house looked amazing, like an actual house. There was food in the kitchen all of a sudden, and we were being told that we had to all round up, go to the park down the street, and wait for him to come pick us up so that he could present our beautiful house to CPS. Wow. So that happened about 3 or 4 times that I can remember, and I'm sure it happened in other houses too. But we didn't all live in the same house. There was a bunch of overlapping situations that happened, whether it be 13 people here or 10 people here, or a few people in one house, whatever. He used all this money, and he was very financially motivated, so he used all these scamming methods to be able to invest in real estate property, build his car dealership in Del Paso Heights, and just keep building assets, buying houses. And through all that, he was scamming people in that too. So this is if I could have just people understand one thing, it's probably just, this isn't about, I bring up sometimes the story and about my dad, and people instantly think, oh, here's some, a kid didn't have the best life and he's upset about it or something like that. And I'm like, if I have one thing for people to understand, take away from all this, is it's about a systemic, like a premeditated plan by this guy to basically human traffic people and use and abuse them, have 20 plus kids to use and abuse them. And besides us, he was scamming the hell out of California. He made probably close to $1 million just off of scamming the state of California, let alone us and what he got out of us. So yeah, it's a pretty big thing. And he's going through court cases right now to, they finally went after him in 2018 for just the stuff that he did towards the state, the stuff that they can get money back for. And again, like in the article says, I said to the reporter, like, I know they don't care about us because there's no motive, there's no incentive to try to, get justice for that stuff. And, sort of understandably so, but again, it is something that I'm going to keep speaking out on and trying to get awareness for, because he's still scamming people. He's still doing this. It's not just me, even though it has affected us and all these victims that are going through so much right now and still trying to cope with it all. Beyond that, he's still scamming California. He's still doing very crazy stuff. So it's something to definitely keep trying to expose.
Yeah, it's it's for me, man, it's tough because I am a dad. And so I think hearing this from just from like the dad perspective, it's obviously super upsetting for me, because it's hard to even imagine, if I accidentally bump into one of my kids and I knock them down, they start crying, like I feel like the worst person in the world. And so, thinking about taking it to this level with your kids and using your kids or your spouse in that way, is maddening for me, for sure, just from that perspective. But even like from like a bigger, broader view, as just like a man, that's a tough thing for me to hear too. And I imagine that for you, this had to have affected your relationship with other like men, like when you're interacting with men in your life. I imagine this had to have affected it somehow, because if this is your example, the example you're seeing every single day, there's obviously a lot of distrust, there's a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. So, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it didn't affect you in that way, but I have to imagine it affected some kind of your relationship with the guys in some kind of way.
I will say, surprisingly not really. I've always been a thinker. I just sit and think about things and try to like make sure that what I'm trying to, the energy that I'm trying to project to something is thoughtful enough to know where it, be intentful with it and stuff like that. So I sit and think to myself, like, again, there's no one to blame. There's no one to blame but one person here for all this stuff. I say trustworthiness in general is just a little bit, I always am trying to think ahead, like, is this person trying to scam me? Is this person trying to, I think it affected me in that way. But men and interacting with men and stuff like that, a lot of people like think that, and for some reason, yeah, it just hasn't really been that way. I was talking to my old high school teacher, Mr. Neal, today actually, and we were just kind of going over our past interactions in high school and stuff, and he was kind of floating that same idea of like, man, it's with everything I went through, I'm just, proud of the fact that you were able to, he noticed that something was a little off, but he said the way I interact with people, and he would never have guessed. And so, yeah, I try to be very intentive with or what's the word, intentional with the energy I'm projecting towards people. And I don't think that, putting people in a category in any rate is ever helpful, or doesn't help anything. So I've just tried to make sure all the energy is focused on the person who created all this. And
Yeah.
That's great, because I feel like I feel like this story, like for you specifically, could have gone a very different direction, and the outcome could have been very different. And your whole, it's awesome to see that your mindset is what it is, and that you do, are that aware of your situation and of how you see the world and how you do things. Because like I said, this could have been a very, very different result for you, and understandably so. Like, this could have looked way different because of everything you went through. So I
Yeah,
think it's cool that you
absolutely.
have that outlook, and I think it's cool that you see the world that way, considering everything that has gone on. One thing I have written down, and kind of taking this in a little bit of a different direction, just to kind of, again, kind of help flesh out this idea of how crazy the story is. It has been a little bit since I read the full article, but one of the things I remember reading was the currency system that was in the article. Like, that to me, like, when I started, it's like, this is a crazy story. And then I got to that point, like, what am I reading right now? Like, this is wild. You know what I'm saying? Like, it almost takes it to another level. So can you explain that a little bit, and like what was going on, and what it was like when you were, I guess, trying to purchase things within your own house? Like, it's just crazy to me. So explain that a little bit to the audience.
Yeah, it starts to become there's elements of the story that are beyond cultish, very odd, bizarre. Um, a lot of the religious leaning elements of the story are so bizarre, and what was kind of pitched to us our whole life is that was kind of the basis of what we were living. We were living a very high level standard in God's eyes and all that stuff, and that we are going to be blessed extra when we went to heaven and all this stuff. So um, that's kind of the stuff that I was so embarrassed about that I tried to completely steer clear from. But as far as like you said, like the currency of how he ran things within the house, there's a lot of bizarre things as well. So he created his name is Norman Masters, and he created what he called Masters bucks as our household currency, because he controlled every single penny that obviously ran through the house. No one had access to anything. We couldn't, call anybody in the family. Like, he had told most of the women that their family were dead, or some, really sick stuff. Told my mom that her mom was dead. And so he controlled basically everything, and so that was just another level of control. Is Masters bucks was his way of going and buying things that he knew we wanted. He'd go buy them at at the flea market or something very cheap, and then you come back and basically have a conversion rate of making money off of us for stuff that we needed, like simple things like shoes and stuff like that. So yeah, that was just one of the many elements of control, the way he did things. But yeah.
Wow. And then, so yeah, that was a bizarre part of the article for sure. And just the rest of it in general, just the, the countless, like, just abusive things, mentally, emotionally, even physically, that really got to me. I was just, I can only imagine how much happened. Like, you can only say so much in the article, like, and it's hard to you can't even put it in words, right? You can't even, it's, what you went through is, you can't put it in words or say it out loud, and then other people can actually feel it. But did he, so just, I guess, asking you personally, like, did he ever lay his hands on you, or do you remember seeing a lot of physical abuse, and I'm sure emotional abuse as well? And that,
Yeah. So it was a lot of people, kind of, there's so many layers. A lot of people, when they ask, what happened, that's sometimes like a question is like, what happened? Who's your, and I'm like, there's so many elements to this story. There's so many layers that it's hard to even, like, I don't even know where to begin most of the time. But I think it's just because things were so chaotic and nothing it was ever stable as far as what was truth in our family, what was standard. It was constantly moving. He was constantly experimenting. It felt like it was just like, sometimes I felt like an experiment. And so I would always hear abuse. I would always hear yelling. I'd always hear, just the state that we were in. We were basically told to act like we didn't exist for years. We had to be very quiet in the house so that our neighbors couldn't know that anyone was there. We had certain times that we could watch the 8 to 10 movies that he had screen for us to be able to watch, that didn't give us any ideas that there's another world out there that we should be in, stuff like that. So, but when it came to abuse specifically, physical abuse, he did not lay his hands on certain people. And for some reason, I was one of those. He probably like smacked me in the head a couple times, just, normal, sometimes normal frustration things. But no, as far as like beatings and stuff, it was mainly the women and a few children that he just really ended up doing a lot. And honestly, brings up an interesting point, because my avoidance method and how I did things, he was very pleased with that. He loved submissive people that shut up and did what he wanted them to do. And so that's actually one of my, I don't blame myself, because I know as a kid and everything, I was just trying to do what I could to try to help the situation. But that's actually one of my main regrets is, one of my only regrets is just being that person that he knew that he had on lock, and how he knew that I could, that I'd just shut up and take it, basically. And so, yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why he didn't hit me. And even in court, when he was testifying, he said that he doesn't understand why I'm so ungrateful of my situation, because he never laid a hand on me. Like, I'm not supposed to take offense to the many times that I saw my mom getting beaten, or one of the other moms getting beaten, or my sister's, jaw getting broken from him, and people getting dragged around by their hair, and all kinds of dark stuff. But yeah, that's his method, and that's kind of just what ends up being one of my biggest regrets, is just not is I guess the avoidance method, and trying to steer clear instead of standing up for things. But as a kid, you don't know what you don't know. So
Yeah, and when you're in it, sorry, Josh, I know, Josh, we have so many
No, you're
questions.
good. You're good.
Say on our part, and I guess on your behalf, it's, yeah, you can't. I mean, I can understand you saying that, but yeah, I mean, it's something that I can't imagine what it's like when you're actually in it. People listening have I have, my own trauma that I went through, through my marriage. Like, you can't explain it. And there are some things you're like, why didn't I, step in, or why didn't I do that? But when you're in it, it's a completely different ball game. And, there's so many, the psychology of it. I mean, we don't have to get into that, but yeah, I think a lot of people listening who have been through their own sort of trauma can probably just relate and say, there's nothing at the time you could have done. What you're doing right now is the best thing. And just thank goodness that that you are doing it, and you are doing the exposure part. And that, I believe, that is your I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but that this is your version of no, enough's enough. We're done, all done. And it's just, and people, I can't imagine people who have been through abuse and trauma within their family, maybe they never say anything, and so anyway, I didn't, just piggybacking off of what you said, maybe I could have done something. I just wanted to commend you for now getting it out there and all that stuff. So
thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that's a good point too, is I think that's what this kind of represents to me too, is trying to make up for that, avoidance. Now I'm doing the exact opposite. Now I'm, standing up, and sometimes I'm the only one trying to make right of the situation. And sometimes it's lonely, sometimes it's hard to go out there, and people are like, who's this guy that's just got this beef with his dad or something like that. And so it's very confusing to some people. It's like I said, it's a story with a lot of elements, so it's hard to just get a quick, concise point out of. A lot of stories you could say in one line, like this happened. With this story, I don't think you really can. So yeah, I appreciate that. And I also commend you for dealing with high school kids these days, because I can only imagine. A lot of respect.
Thank you. It just, but yeah, and just, yeah, it breaks my heart to like think about how many kids are in front of me every day. And, you know, the ones who I imagine are like how you were in high school and just very like, just do what you're supposed to do, keep to yourself, you know, the whole avoidant thing. Like, you know, sometimes my spidey senses go off on some of these kids, but I'm just like, I don't know what, like, they're not telling me anything. Like, I can't legally do anything. Like, I don't, you know, it's just, and so for me, it makes me start to, you know, your situation makes me want to like, just remind myself in the future, like, hey, if you have a hunch, just like maybe dig in a little deeper. Cause I, like you said, you appreciated that one teacher who made sure you got to college because she knew something else was going on. So, it's just a good reminder for everyone, your story. And so I think, yeah, not only exposing your dad and just standing up for your family, I think it's good for everybody to hear.
Yeah, and there's another person within the church that we were going to is, um, you know, kind of single-handedly took it upon himself to try figuring out what was going on and trying to help out. And so, what was cool is we recently reconnected and got to kind of talk through everything in a whole different light. And so, yeah, I keep, you know, coming across situations where it reminds me that, you know, this is worth the fight. This is worth, you know, keeping going and trying to expose. And um, yeah, it's just main motivation though every day is just seeing how things could have been different and seeing so many of the victims still really hurting. And just you know, I just want to keep trying to do whatever I can, even if it's just stuff like this, trying to get some people to understand what's going on. And um, now going forward and trying to write my book, I another uh, motivation has popped up, and that's just, you know, if someone's in a similar situation or somewhat similar situation as to what I was going through, um, hopefully it reaches, like, that would be that would be so amazing if I could just reach one person that was going through a similar situation and like recognize some similar red flags or signs, and you know, ended up deciding to, or being able to get away from it because of that. That would make all of this more than worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, interesting point too. Like I'm wondering what the response has been like since the article came out. Because I mean, you know, it's very obviously very different, but like I know the excitement that I get even to this day when it's Tuesday morning and I know a new podcast episode is about to drop. Like I get excited. Obviously your situation is very different. I imagine there was a lot of anxiety and probably some nervousness, but you know, once that article drops, what was the response like from the community, the people that read it? It's obviously online, it's through social media. So I imagine there was a mixed bag of reactions, but overall, what would you say the response has been like from people?
Shock, surprise, and people kind of like, wait, hold on, what? Like, this was going on in Sacramento? Like, you hear about this stuff like out in, you know, rural, I don't know, I don't want to categorize, but you know, you hear some crazy stuff
Yeah.
in different situations. People know that Sac can get a little crazy, but they didn't know something like this was going on. And so, um, yeah, it's a lot of shock. Um, and you know, when it did come out, I was a little, you know, nervous. Just again, it's still embarrassing to be a part of. That doesn't change. You know, just the motive has changed and the perspective around that has changed. So it's still embarrassing to have, you know, your life on display like that, and what, you know, what was going on and everything. But you know, I'm just trying to keep changing my perspective on that. And um yeah, this guy has threatened my life plenty of times. He's threatened many people's lives in the story many of times. So I guess that has kind of kind of gotten numb to that now, so that doesn't really bother me too much anymore. But yeah, I'd just say mainly shock. People were confused and shocked.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And you know, it was one of the parts, and I was telling Deb this before, you know, you hopped on, Josh, was the part that was really almost I guess unsettling would be the right word, was the fact that, you know, there were some direct quotes from your dad in the article. when they reached out for comment from him. And, you know, you would expect someone, if an article like this came out about someone, you would expect them to be like livid and just, you know, screaming and trying to get onto everything to explain their side of the story. But I got a sense of calm from his perspective. It was very matter of fact, like, well, these people are upset because of X, Y, and Z. What can you do about it? Like, and that was the part that was almost like I said, unsettling to me, because it did feel very much like very cold, very calculated, and just operating from a different place. So I thought it was an interesting part of the article.
Yeah, he knows he's gotten away with it for so long. That's probably
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
Although I will say it did rattle him. I know it rattled him. It woke up his side of the family to what he's been doing.
Hmm.
They had heard bits and pieces, and they were kind of like, oh, like really, like, but I know it rattled him when some of the people that he had, you know, lied to all this time and made them think something else, when they finally realized, like, seeing this, like, wow, okay, he's not a good guy. And so I know that affected him. And then he actually was on the Yahoo comments of it, trying to reply to anybody who said something that he felt he needed to respond to. So the comments got actually shut down. It was we got like 300 people in there commenting and stuff. So yeah, I heard from Sacramento Bee, it was a, you know, very popular story. And yeah, I know he's cold and calculated, like you said. It's he's been getting away with it for decades, literally decades. And yeah, that's always been his vibe. He's cold and calculated. Yeah.
And if I can add psychopathic and sociopathic,
Sure. Sure.
those aren't too strong of words.
Although,
Yeah, it's just insane. Now, Josh, so how did everything start with you reaching out to a reporter, or how did that come about? Like, what made you want to start? What made you say, no, we're all done. This needs to get out?
yeah, I had heard something. I think it was him bragging to, oh, he attended one of my half siblings' weddings and made the whole situation about him, and was bragging to everyone about how much money he made off of us. And that's kind of just what forced my hand, had me up at night. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to do something about this. And I cold emailed a bunch of reporters around, and I didn't hear back anything from anybody. And then I was like, okay, well, this, you know, let me do a little bit deeper digging. And so I looked at specific, you know, crime reporters, and I was looking up crime reporters, and then I found um, the Sacramento Bee's head crimes reporter, Melinda, and she responded back within 5 minutes and said, wow, this is crazy, let's talk more. And so that's kind of how it started. It was probably 3 months in the making. I think we connected in January or February, and she put it together beautifully. I was emotional. My family was emotional when we first read it, and yeah, it's still hard to believe that it's even out there. But I'm trying to put it behind me and think, you know, there's more work to be done, and so I appreciate you guys letting me continue that work.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure, man. And it's cool that it was cool that she was willing to write the story, especially when you got so many, you know, non-responses, and that someone saw the value in getting that story out. I think it's an awesome thing. I am curious. So, because your mom is also mentioned in the article quite a bit. What's, I guess, what's been like the biggest difference in your guys' relationship? Because I imagine that it's been kind of up and down throughout the years. Obviously, being in that situation, and then, you know, kind of escaping that situation. Like, how much and then obviously going through this process too, which your mom has been involved with as well. Like, how much has your relationship with her changed?
Not at all. That's been my most steady, you know, foundation through all of this as a kid. she was always there. She's always balancing out what, I wasn't getting from the father side. Taught me how to read, write, anything that she could throughout my younger years. We were very limited, obviously, with resources to do that, but she was the one that helped set the foundation, and my relationship with her hasn't changed a bit. We've been always been great, and she's now remarried and um, trying to live her life. She's always tried to live her life the best she can and provide as much as she can, and yeah, it's not much has changed. She's still great.
That's awesome. Was it weird when your mom got remarried? Because I imagine, 'cause now that you're older, you've lived through this other situation. I mean, I have to imagine that was in the back of your minds, like, the distrust, any of that stuff. Was it weird, being older when she got remarried and having to kind of walk through that?
Just a very minimal bit. Again, I think that was around the time when I started to really focus on where my intentions were as far as projecting negative or energy at people that didn't have anything to do with it and stuff. So not really, honestly. I just tried to have an open mind, and he's been cool, and we've been trying to he's supportive with this too. He's very supportive with trying to help out with this particular situation and trying to get justice and stuff. So yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Awesome.
I like the part of the article. Gosh, I'm sorry. I need to scroll down to see which one of your sisters is it, but one of them is going to the police academy in the article. My favorite part of the article was that, and she spoke a lot in the article, I believe. And she was like, how great would that be if I could be the one to finally arrest him one day, if this all comes to that. Anyway, that was badass. I just thought that was great.
It is badass, and she's so great. She's kind of been one of my closer siblings throughout all of this, and she went through a ton, like just ton of abuse, and just the way she's handled it so gracefully, and she has kids now that she takes such great care of, and again, one of those people that is just constantly trying to do the right thing, and yeah, she went through a lot. Is one of the people that never saw a penny of her money, even though she worked extremely hard. Um, just never went to a day of school in her life. Like, just very sad situation, but the way she's handled it so gracefully is just very admirable. So yeah, she now going, into the police academy and trying to again get some sort of justice. She definitely has a bright future and is doing very good things now.
Yeah. And then Josh, like, all of this coming back up in the article, and, talking, to, the public about this, and people reaching out to you. And of course now, like, talking about it on podcasts. Is it therapeutic for you? Is it, I can imagine it brings up, obviously some trauma. I don't see how it wouldn't, but you seem to be handling it well. But what's that been like for you, to it kind of being like shed to light, and you having to go back and back and back and to places I'm sure you would rather forget?
Yeah, it's actually been surprisingly very therapeutic. I've tried like general therapy and stuff, talking to people that obviously I don't know, and it doesn't feel as therapeutic and as helpful as kind of discussing it with the people involved. We have we've gotten together, and we have like a group chat, some of the the people involved, and it's just helped us become more stronger. We've been able to articulate and see things post trauma, and look back and see what we maybe could have done differently, or what was actually going on compared to what was being depicted that was going on. And all that stuff is just very therapeutic, because it was never allowed. We were always on an island wondering what was actually going on, and just tons of confusion, tons of what's the term, divide and conquering, basically, that was going on. So we're all divided up, but we're all a lot of us are, back together again and on the same page. And so that's the therapeutic side of it. And yeah, I enjoy talking about it with other people so they can know too. It's just the only thing that really gets me is just, again, having the embarrassing nature of my life out there in public, and then hoping that people don't, I don't know, get the wrong theory or the wrong idea about why I'm even doing this. I think sometimes people, think that there's a lot of people in the world that are just, trying to look for ways to be a victim, or trying to ask for a handout or anything. That's just not my intention, not my way of life, not what I'm trying to do. It's strictly to just, and he preys on that too. My dad really preys on that and tries to act like I'm, trying to do that, and tries to use that. So I just hope that the intention is set. I just want some exposure. I want some sort of justice for what's been going on. And there's no way in the world that he should be walking around free right now.
I agree. And if I can, again, to what you just said, you don't want people to think, it's a handout, or it's just a kind of dramatic thing. This is far, in my personal opinion, I'm sure in Josh's too, and probably most people's, to be honest, like, this is far from that. Like, this is not a story of, you asked your parents for a t-shirt at the mall and they said no, and then you went and ran to a news reporter because you didn't get
just a throw fit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Although your dad is making it seem like that, but again, he's psychopathic and sociopathic. Sorry to say my personal opinion on that, but agreed. Right. And so this story is definitely I'm sure more so than not, people are glad you said something, because it's a very heart-wrenching story. And like I was saying earlier, who knows what other people have gone through, whether it's something similar or something that's completely different, but maybe hopefully validating them, like, hey, like, it's okay to say something, like, this is not normal. This is not normal this is not you're complaining because you didn't get your allowance money. This is not a spoiled brat thing at all. This is trauma. This is abuse. This is neglect. Like, this is, again, this man should be in prison. Absolutely. I'm surprised there aren't torches at his car lot place. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's crazy. So it's, I just wanted to validate you in that aspect. And if anyone thinks that it is attention seeking, like, I'm sorry, they can go pound sand. Like, I don't know how else to say that, but right. So, but yeah, this is a very good thing that you are sharing this. And then, sorry, just a question, just to go right into that. The siblings that reached out to you that you didn't know about, did they share similar stories, or like, how did you, I guess, validate? And I'm not trying to say that they just reached out to you just, to try to, I'm not saying they were lying. That's not what I'm saying, but like, how did they share stories and you were like, oh yeah, like, I know exactly what you're talking about?
Well, I just kind of connected with them, and I don't want to, I guess, maybe it'd be too much to share kind of like what their side of things is right now, just because, I'm building trust and relationship with them currently. So, but the theme was they were more of on the side of, they hadn't had any contact with them. It was their mom had escaped, and it was a person that the mom escaped, and we were told that she died of leukemia. So it kind of just shows the like you said, the sociopath nature, the ability to really dictate and control in a very sick way that most people wouldn't be able to do. And so that's the nature of reconnecting with them, which I think a lot of it was just they were shocked, and they had heard about him as a person and that they should steer clear from him, but they hadn't really interacted with him, thank goodness.
Right. So they saw the story and they were like, what?
That's my dad. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's wild. And I feel like, part of one of the things you mentioned in the article was, and obviously, like I mentioned before, and the stuff we talked about with you last time you were on the show was, videography, filmmaking, all of that. And I know there was a mention of you wanting to do a documentary about this whole thing, which I didn't really think about it at the time. And I honestly did not think about it until we're having this conversation now. But that would be a really interesting thing to do simply because you are also part of the story. And I don't know how common that is for a documentarian to do a documentary where they are such a key part of the story. Would that be difficult? I mean, or or was that a more common thing than I realized in the documentary world? But like that just hit me, like that would be a really challenging thing to film, shoot, but then also like try to tell that story when you're so deeply woven in it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think I was more thinking about like making sure I was a part of the creation of it. Just
Gotcha.
like, again, so I can go back to that um intentions coming across the right way. I think
Sure.
with a story like this, and again, a lot of the time when people are coming forward with stories, and or not to not validate them in any way, but some stories are, the intentions are displayed the wrong way, and it's just I just wanted to make sure that I'm a part of explaining those and getting those across the right way for everyone involved. That's mainly what I'd love to be I'd love to be behind the scenes, making sure that I had some say in what was going on for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy too, because you're not just telling your story, you're telling so many people's stories. So the weight of responsibility that comes with that. Um, I can't even imagine what that must feel like. But um I have to say, man, I have a lot of respect with how you've handled it and everything you've shared here because, you know, I don't know. I think sometimes because we know you, we're looking at it from how it's affected you. But like, I don't know about you, Deb, but like sometimes, like even in this conversation, I'm like, there were 20 plus other people that this affected. You know what I mean? And so like the way I see it sometimes is like this affected Josh, but it's like the story you're telling, the things you're saying, the podcasts, articles you're a part of, like all of it is like you have a lot of people behind you that you're kind of leading the charge for, and so um, a lot of respect to you for that. But I can't even imagine the weight of responsibility that comes with that.
Well, thank you, and thank you both. Forgot to say thank you also for your previous words about validating what I've been trying to do and my experience, and I think that's just the main focus of what I'm trying to do now is, like you said, for all those people involved. And the number one thing is validating their experience, because they had to escape the situation, be told that everything that they saw and were a part of never happened, and just get on with their life. And that's not okay. That's he holds all the profit. He holds all all the profit off of what he did, and without any consequence. And now everyone else has to figure out how they're going to restart their lives. And I'm just not okay with that. And I can't sleep at night knowing that that's going on. And so it's about number one priority is validating these people's experiences. And so yeah, thank you. That's the main motive.
Yeah. And we appreciate you coming on and just talking about everything and answering our questions, and just just mad respect for just having this article come out in general. Like I said, people who deal with any type of trauma, it's hard for them to even like say it out loud to a stranger or close friend, let alone just kind of, make it known and just put it out there, like you said, for everyone to know your situation. But it is something that is just, it's courageous is the word I was trying to look for, because because that's the hard thing, because not only are you still dealing with your trauma and your aftermath, but you're trying to make sure that all of your siblings, the ones that are willing to share their experience or talk to you or whatever, to make sure that their voice is heard and that their story is validated, because I can only imagine growing up that way. And even now as an adult thinking like, am I crazy? Did that happen? And am I allowed to talk about it? And just, so many things that anyone listening can probably relate to at least a little bit of something within this episode. Just because it's really hard to talk about things, let alone all of that. And like I said, I'm sure that article just like is the tip of the iceberg for the layers of things that you guys experienced as children that no child should ever have to experience. So so I commend you for exposing your dad, because he's a sociopathic. I could go on and on. We won't make it too much about him or anything, but yeah, he does need to be in jail and maybe worse. But so we appreciate you sharing your story. Definitely.
Thank you guys both, and appreciate all the kind words and validation. And thank you for the opportunity to share more about it.
Yeah. Oh, you're on
Sorry,
mute.
I mute myself. I've almost made it the entire episode without doing that, and dropped the ball at the very end. Do you have any kind of resources or any places, like if people find themselves in a situation where there are things going on behind the scenes in their lives that they need to talk to someone about? Do you have any recommendations, any things that you would suggest they go to seek help?
Good question. And I should probably be more in tune with that. Honestly, how I've been recognizing more, red flags, and how I've been learning to know what was really wrong with the situation, and be more in tune with that, is just honestly listening to true crime, watching a lot of true crime. I've been in touch with some, prominent figures, if you will, in true crime history, and victims of some pretty crazy stuff. And I'd say just to be connected with that. And also, just one of the things I'm probably going to write in the book is just, if I could stress anything or give advice to people that are involved in this stuff, is just like, no matter what someone tells you, no matter what it seems in the moment that is right, or right at that situation, if anyone is controlling you anyway, or telling you to do something that you don't want to do, or I don't know, making your life in any way about not you, then it's not a good situation, and it should be, given a second thought at least. That's kind of the theme of our life. We're just, everything was, wait, what's next? Like, what's next? And all that was next was more control and more abuse and more, more abuse. So just, a person's life should be about them first. And if it's not about you first, then you're probably not in the best situation.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's really good advice. And just really, sorry, I want to add one more thing to touch on to, I think it was your mom, or I'm not sure if it was your mom or one of the other women in the article said, I didn't know. Like I didn't know about the term red flags these days. Like I didn't know about the red flags. I didn't know about the whole isolation thing. I didn't know that was a bad thing, to be isolated like that and to not have contact with anyone else. Like that's definitely a huge sign of manipulation and stuff. So I think it was good for that to be mentioned in the article, because there are still some people, women and maybe in men too, I don't mean to make it a sexist thing, but like it's, sometimes statistically speaking, it's mostly women who can get trapped into something. And the isolation part is a huge warning sign. So that was good that was at least mentioned in the article. And everything you just said about what to look out for is great advice.
Yeah, and that's a good point, the first part of that, because I'm sorry. Had a brain fart there.
Okay.
There
So
you
okay,
go.
I just want to point out to everybody too, before we booked this podcast, Josh did warn me that he was coming back from a long trip. And so he's like, I'll do it, but just so you know, it's, you're getting me at a tired state. So anything like this, we don't even care about, because you're doing us a favor by joining us after a long trip, man. So we appreciate it.
Free pass.
A free pass.
Thanks for that free pass. Yeah, that yeah, in general, I'm oh, that's what I was gonna say. Sorry. Yeah, that's a good point, because I almost feel bad for the women involved with the situation they're in, because of how now, like, going back and trying to tell the story, there's a lot of people that can't comprehend their mindset or the way that they were involved in that situation for so long. And I like how the reporter did a very good job of starting out the story saying, you know, these women most of the time, were kids when this started. This basically, I mean, this everything about the story, I just realized, like, probably 6 months ago, is every bit of human trafficking, really. That's basically what was going on here. He found vulnerable young women, some all the way ranging to 13, 14, all the way, to older, um, and took advantage of them. That's what he did, was human trafficking, as well as many other things. So I just hope that people don't try to judge the women for, quote unquote, staying around, as they say, or, not being a part of it. These people didn't. These people were kids themselves, coming from very vulnerable situations, who suddenly were thrust into a situation where their lives basically, or not basically, their lives were dependent on this person, and were threatened if they didn't behave how he wanted them to behave. And so that side of it is very sad to me. It's a lot of people don't understand that, and so I'm hoping also that that's one of the reasons why I would want to be a part of a documentary or whatever media moving forward. Is I want to help get that point across, because that's a big part of this. And people think women, they hear women and moms, and they think, oh, like, the moms, like, they're older, they should know, but they were trapped at a very young age. This was back at a time when they didn't have access to a Facebook with multiple people's points of view and perspectives, and just daily social things. My mom personally was cooped up in a house with an abusive mother, and was vulnerable herself. All these people were in a very vulnerable state, and he took advantage of it. And so I liked a quote, actually, or not a quote, but a comment that someone left on the story, and it kind of just had me thinking that why I want to keep doing this as well. Is the comment read, I think she said something like, "This is so sad," or "This is so sad. Some people are just too eager to hurt the most vulnerable among us." And it hit me. I was like, that's true. Like, it's not just, obviously, it's not just us that have gone through something like this. Every day in the world, someone is trying to take advantage. Someone is trying to abuse someone in a vulnerable state, and just hoping that somehow can be a part of helping those people.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I think, especially with social media, people are very quick to say, well, that person should have done X, Y, and Z. Or if I was in that position, I would have done X, Y, and Z. And like you said, they don't take into account the vulnerability that's involved. And I also think that when you have a vulnerable person, a lot of times desperation is also a part of that, right? And when you're just looking for some kind of lifeline, something to hold on to, and you have a so-called white knight ride in and can help that person get to a better place, supposedly. I think when you're in a desperate place, we do a lot of crazy things when we're in a desperate place. And so I think you're 100% right, 100% right, man. I think sometimes from the outside looking in, we think that we would do things differently, but until you taste that desperation, I don't think you really know what you would actually do. So I think that's a great point, and I love the fact that you are focused on that with everything that you're doing, whether it be the book or the documentary. Making that a part of it, man, I think is really important. So again, we keep saying it, but a lot of respect to you for everything that you're doing with this, because a lot of people are being affected. People you know and people that you don't know are going to be impacted by this.
Well, thank you guys very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Deb, I mean, we could probably ask a million other questions, but we also want to be respectful of this man because I don't know, it's the middle of June, coming up towards the end of June, and you do videography and film. So I imagine this is a very busy time for you with all these weddings and graduations and everything. So the fact that you were willing to take some time out for us, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate you
absolutely.
guys.
Yeah, don't hop off when we log off. Just a few more off-air things, like some questions that I have for you, and I promise I won't take up too much of your time, but just don't log off. But yeah, we appreciate you telling your story. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Before we get out of here though, where can they follow you? I'm going to try my best to remember to post the link to the article as well, but where can they follow you to kind of follow your journey from this point on?
Well, yeah, I guess it'd be the article. Keep an eye out for my book called Behind Closed Doors coming soon. And then, yeah, hopefully documentary. Might have a connection to the Dateline show. Don't
Oh,
want
wow.
that prematurely, but
Yeah.
looking like may have something in the works there. So hopefully that goes through. And yeah, just be a good person and don't take advantage of vulnerable people.
There we go. Some of a very crazy story with just that one line. So thank you so much, Josh. We appreciate it, and good luck with everything moving forward.
Appreciate you guys both. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable podcast.